In the dusty training grounds of Fort Bragg, where America's deadliest warriors are forged, a 5 feet 4 inches woman with calloused hands and steel-gray eyes stood before a line of Navy SEALs. They had heard the stories, the whispers that traveled through military circles like wildfire. Some called them myths. Others called them impossible. But Master Chief Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran who had seen action in 3 wars, looked directly into those gray eyes and said words that would echo through military history. "Gentlemen, meet Sergeant First Class Maya Chen. In 6 months, she will teach you things about combat that will save your lives. In 12 months, you will understand why enemies across 4 continents know her by only one name, Apex." The SEALs exchanged glances. "Save the ammo, Princess," one of them had muttered under his breath just moments before. Now, as Maya stepped forward with the quiet confidence of someone who had stared death in the face and made it blink first, that same SEAL felt his smirk fade. What they were about to witness would challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare, precision, and what it truly means to be lethal. This is the true story of how a woman dismissed as just another diversity hire became the most feared and respected warrior in modern military history. The legend of Apex was about to begin. What follows is the verified account of Sergeant First Class Maya Chun, drawn from military records, witness testimonies, and declassified mission reports that span 7 years of the most dangerous operations in modern warfare. Maya Chun learned to shoot before she learned to drive. Growing up in rural Montana, where the nearest neighbor was 3 miles away and the closest town was a 40-minute drive through winding mountain roads, shooting wasn't a hobby or a sport. It was survival. Her father, David Chun, was a former Army Ranger who had left the military after serving 2 tours in Vietnam. He never talked about the war, but Maya noticed how his hands would shake sometimes when thunder rolled across the valley, and how he always positioned himself with his back to the wall in restaurants. What he did talk about was precision, discipline, and the weight of responsibility that came with holding a weapon. Maya's mother, Sarah, had been born and raised on the same ranch where Maya now called home. Sarah Chun was the kind of woman who could birth a calf, repair a fence, and cook a 5-course meal all in the same day. She taught Maya that strength came not from size or volume, but from persistence and intelligence. In their house, there was no such thing as women's work or men's work. There was just work that needed doing. Every morning before school, Maya would spend an hour on the range her father had built behind their barn. It started with a BB gun when she was 7, progressed to a .22 rifle by age 10, and by her 13th birthday, she was out shooting grown men at the county fair. But David Chin never let his daughter believe that natural talent was enough. "Talent without discipline is just potential energy," he would tell her as she cleaned her rifle each evening. "Discipline without intelligence is just following orders. You need all 3 to be truly dangerous." The first time Maya understood what her father meant was during her sophomore year of high school. The county sheriff, a man named Bill Harrison who had served with David in Vietnam, had asked David to help train his deputies in marksmanship. Maya had been helping her father set up targets when Deputy Martinez, a 25-year-old former Marine, made the mistake of suggesting that maybe Maya should go inside while the men practiced. David Chun had looked at his daughter, then at the deputy, and smiled in a way that made Maya's stomach tighten with anticipation. "Deputy Martinez," David said, his voice carrying that particular edge that Maya recognized from the few times her father had talked about combat. "How about you and Maya each take 5 shots at that target? Whoever gets the tighter grouping gets to run today's training session." Maya was 15 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall, and weighed about 120 pounds soaking wet. Deputy Martinez was 6 feet tall, 190 pounds of muscle, and had qualified as an expert marksman in the Marines. The target was set at 300 yards, far enough that most recreational shooters would struggle to hit it at all. Maya took her position, controlled her breathing the way her father had taught her, and fired 5 rounds in less than 30 seconds. When they walked out to check the target, all 5 shots were clustered in a group smaller than a quarter, dead center in the bullseye. Deputy Martinez managed to put 4 shots in the black, with one flyer that barely caught the edge of the scoring zone. His grouping was respectable for most shooters, but compared to Maya's performance, it looked like amateur hour. That was the day Maya first heard someone whisper the words that would follow her for the rest of her life. That girl is something else entirely. But her father wasn't satisfied with just marksmanship. David Chen had seen too many good shooters die in combat because they lacked other essential skills. Maya learned to move silently through the woods around their ranch, tracking deer and elk until she could get within 20 feet of them without being detected. She learned to read weather patterns, to predict animal behavior, and to navigate using only the stars and her own internal compass. Sarah Chun contributed her own lessons. Maya learned to read people the way she read weather patterns, watching for the subtle signs that indicated deception, fear, or aggression. She learned to project calm confidence even when her heart was pounding. And she learned that the most dangerous opponents were often the ones who underestimated themselves and overestimated everyone else. By the time Maya graduated high school, she was already being recruited by colleges offering shooting scholarships. But Maya had different plans. The morning after graduation, she walked into the Army recruiting office in Billings and told Staff Sergeant Williams that she wanted to be a sniper. Staff Sergeant Williams, a career soldier with deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan under his belt, looked at this teenage girl with her neat ponytail and earnest expression and tried to redirect her toward more appropriate military occupational specialties. Maybe logistics, he suggested, or intelligence. The Army always needed smart young women in those fields. Maya listened politely, then asked if there was a shooting range nearby where she could demonstrate her qualifications. An hour later, after watching Maya put 20 rounds through the same hole at 200 meters, Staff Sergeant Williams was on the phone with his recruiter station commander, asking about expedited processing for what he described as a once-in-a-career recruit. Basic training at Fort Benning was Maya's first real exposure to military culture, and her first taste of a skepticism and occasional hostility that would dog her entire career. Her drill sergeants were professional and fair, but Maya could see the doubt in their eyes every time she stepped up to the firing line. Female soldiers were still relatively new in combat roles, and a teenage girl claiming she wanted to be a sniper struck many people as either naive or attention-seeking. Maya let her performance do the talking. During the Army's basic rifle marksmanship training, where recruits are expected to hit 23 out of 40 targets to qualify, Maya hit all 40 targets. When her drill sergeant asked if she wanted to try the test again to see if she could repeat the performance, Maya hit 40 out of 40 again. The third time, just to be absolutely certain, she hit 40 out of 40 while other recruits called out random numbers to try to distract her. But marksmanship was only part of what made a soldier. Maya excelled in physical training, not because she was the strongest or fastest recruit in her company, but because she understood how to pace herself and how to push through discomfort. She scored perfect marks in land navigation, weapons maintenance, and first aid. Her tactical exercises showed an intuitive understanding of battlefield dynamics that impressed her instructors. More importantly, Maya demonstrated the kind of calm under pressure that couldn't be taught. During a live-fire exercise where recruits had to advance under simulated artillery bombardment, Maya was the only member of her squad who maintained proper spacing and fire discipline. While other recruits either froze or rushed forward in panic, Maya moved with deliberate precision, choosing her positions carefully and making every shot count. After basic training, Maya's next step was advanced individual training for military police, which was the closest she could get to combat arms at the time. But Maya had bigger plans. She had researched every possible path to sniper school, and she knew that exceptional performance in an MP unit could lead to opportunities with special operations units that might give her the chance she was looking for. Her MP training at Fort Leonard Wood was where Maya first encountered real resistance to her ambitions. Her instructors were supportive, but several of her fellow trainees made it clear that they didn't think women belonged in combat roles, and they certainly didn't belong in elite units like special operations. The worst of them was a private named Johnson, a former college football player who stood 6 feet 6 inches and never missed an opportunity to remind Maya that combat was a man's world. Johnson went out of his way to make training exercises more difficult for Maya, sometimes accidentally blocking her line of sight during shooting exercises or providing incorrect information during map reading exercises. Maya tolerated this behavior for exactly 3 weeks. Then, during a combat simulation exercise, Johnson decided to escalate his harassment by deliberately stepping on Maya's rifle scope while she was trying to engage targets. The scope was damaged, making accurate shooting nearly impossible. Maya stood up, looked Johnson directly in the eye, and spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper, but somehow carried across the entire training area. "Private Johnson, you just made a mistake that could get people killed in combat. I'm going to give you exactly one chance to apologize and replace this scope." Johnson laughed and suggested that Maya should file a complaint with her mommy if she didn't like how men conducted business. That was when Maya decided to provide Johnson with a different kind of education. The next morning, Maya challenged Johnson to a shooting competition. Winner would get to redesign the training schedule for the rest of their time at Fort Leonard Wood. Johnson, confident in his own abilities and eager to humiliate Maya in front of their entire class, accepted immediately. Maya borrowed a rifle from the armory, spent 5 minutes adjusting the scope, and proceeded to give Johnson and everyone watching a masterclass in precision shooting. At 100 meters, Maya put 10 rounds into a group smaller than a dime. At 200 meters, her group was still smaller than a quarter. At 300 meters, shooting at targets that many soldiers couldn't even see clearly, Maya's shots were clustered in a pattern that looked like someone had used a single bullet to punch multiple holes. Johnson, shooting immediately after Maya, managed respectable groupings at 100 and 200 meters, but fell apart completely at 300 meters. Half his shots missed the target entirely, and the other half were scattered across the scoring area in a pattern that looked like he was shooting with his eyes closed. But Maya wasn't finished. She walked back to the 400-meter line, a distance where most soldiers would be satisfied just to hit the target, and fired 10 more rounds. Every shot was a bullseye. The instructors had to use binoculars to confirm that all 10 rounds had actually hit the target, because from 400 meters away, it was impossible to see the individual holes with the naked eye. Johnson never bothered Maya again. More importantly, word of Maya's shooting ability spread throughout the training command, and by the time she graduated from MP school, several special operations recruiters had already made informal inquiries about her interest in applying for specialized units. Maya's first assignment was to the 519th Military Police Battalion at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Fort Bragg was home to the 82nd Airborne Division, the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and more elite military units than any other installation in the world. For Maya, it was the perfect place to prove that she belonged among America's most elite warriors. Her first commanding officer, Captain Rodriguez, was a 15-year veteran who had served multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Rodriguez had seen enough combat to know that survival often depended more on intelligence and adaptability than on raw physical strength, but he had never worked with a female soldier who was actively seeking combat assignments. Captain Rodriguez decided to test Maya's resolve by assigning her to the most challenging duties available. Maya found herself pulling guard duty in the worst weather, conducting vehicle searches during the most chaotic times of day, and handling crowd control during events where tensions were high and tempers were short. Maya approached every assignment with the same methodical precision she brought to shooting. She studied the patterns of behavior she observed, learned to predict when situations were likely to escalate, and developed an almost supernatural ability to defuse tension through a combination of calm authority and genuine respect for the people she was dealing with. 6 months into her assignment, Maya was working gate security when a disturbance broke out in the visitor processing center. A former soldier who had been discharged under less than honorable circumstances was demanding to see his commanding officer, claiming that he had been wrongfully terminated and threatening to take his complaint to the media. The man was clearly agitated and possibly under the influence of alcohol or drugs. He was shouting, gesticulating wildly, and making vague threats about exposing corruption in the military justice system. Several MPs had responded to the scene, but their efforts to calm the situation were only making things worse. Maya approached the situation differently. Instead of trying to assert authority or issue commands, she listened. She asked questions about the man's service record, his family situation, and his specific concerns about his discharge. She didn't agree with his complaints or validate his grievances, but she treated him with the dignity that his military service deserved. 20 minutes later, the man was sitting calmly in the visitor center, completing the proper paperwork to request a formal review of his discharge. He thanked Maya for being the first person in months to treat him like a human being instead of a problem to be solved. Captain Rodriguez, who had observed the entire interaction, called Maya into his office the next day. "Chun," he said, "I've been watching you for 6 months, and I think you're wasting your talents doing routine MP work. How would you feel about applying for some specialized training?" Maya's heart rate increased, but she kept her voice steady. "What kind of specialized training, sir? Ever heard of the Asymmetric Warfare Group?" Rodriguez asked. Maya had not only heard of AWG, she had researched every aspect of their mission and requirements. The Asymmetric Warfare Group was a specialized unit that focused on training conventional forces to deal with unconventional threats. It was one of the few units in the Army where exceptional individual skills could lead to opportunities with even more elite organizations. "Yes, sir," Maya replied. "I'd be very interested in that opportunity." Captain Rodriguez smiled. "I thought you might be. I've already made some calls. If you're serious about this, you'll be starting the selection process next month." As Maya left Captain Rodriguez's office, she felt a familiar mixture of excitement and determination that she had learned to associate with major turning points in her life. She was about to take another step toward her ultimate goal, and she had no intention of looking back. The Asymmetric Warfare Group selection process was designed to find soldiers who could think beyond conventional military doctrine. AWG needed operators who could adapt to rapidly changing situations, work effectively with minimal supervision, and develop creative solutions to problems that had no textbook answers. The selection course had a 40% pass rate, and it had never been completed by a female soldier. Maya arrived at the AWG training facility in January, in the middle of one of the worst winter storms in North Carolina's recent history. The weather was considered part of the selection process. Candidates who couldn't perform effectively in adverse conditions wouldn't be able to handle the unpredictable environments where AWG operated. The first week was pure physical and mental endurance. Candidates were required to complete a series of challenges that tested not just their fitness and military skills, but their ability to maintain performance standards when they were exhausted, stressed, and operating with incomplete information. Maya's first real test came during a navigation exercise that required candidates to find their way through dense forest to a series of checkpoints, using only a map, compass, and their own judgment. The catch was that several of the checkpoints had been moved without notice, and candidates had to figure out the new locations based on subtle clues left by the instructors. Most candidates approached this exercise like a standard land navigation course, following their planned routes methodically and becoming increasingly frustrated when they couldn't find the expected checkpoints. Maya took a different approach. She studied the terrain carefully, looking for signs of recent human activity, and used her tracking skills to follow the faint trails left by the instructors who had moved the checkpoints. While other candidates were still searching for the first relocated checkpoint, Maya had found all three and was already heading to the final rally point. Her success wasn't just a matter of superior navigation skills. It demonstrated the kind of adaptive thinking that AWG was looking for. The second week focused on weapons proficiency and tactical problem solving. Candidates were presented with scenarios that had no clear-cut solutions, requiring them to balance competing priorities and make decisions with limited information and time. Maya's defining moment came during an exercise that simulated a hostage rescue in an urban environment. The scenario involved multiple civilian hostages, unknown numbers of hostile forces, and strict rules of engagement that prohibited any action that might endanger innocent lives. Other candidates approached the problem as a traditional tactical exercise, planning assault routes and coordinating suppressive fire. Maya spent her preparation time studying the building blueprints and the intelligence briefing about the hostages and hostage takers. She noticed something that the other candidates had missed. One of the hostages was described as a local interpreter who would likely speak the same language as the hostage takers. Instead of planning an assault, Maya developed a deception plan. She positioned herself where she could observe the building without being detected and used her knowledge of basic phrases in the hostage takers' language to create a diversion that convinced them they were being attacked from a completely different direction. While the hostage takers were focused on the imaginary threat Maya had created, she was able to signal the interpreter through a window, providing him with instructions that allowed him to help the other hostages escape through a route that the hostage takers weren't monitoring. Maya completed the exercise without firing a single shot, with all hostages rescued and all hostile forces captured when they emerged to investigate the diversion she had created. The exercise instructors admitted that in 15 years of running similar scenarios, no candidate had ever found a solution that didn't involve some level of armed confrontation. But technical proficiency was only part of what AWG was evaluating. They needed soldiers who could work effectively in environments where cultural sensitivity and interpersonal skills were as important as tactical expertise. The third week of selection focused on scenarios that required candidates to work with foreign military units, civilian populations, and non-governmental organizations. Maya's background growing up in rural Montana, where neighbors helped each other regardless of politics or personal differences, served her well in these exercises. She had learned early in life that building trust required consistency, honesty, and genuine respect for other people's perspectives, even when those perspectives seemed foreign or wrong. During one exercise, Maya was assigned to work with a simulated Afghan village council to develop a security plan that would protect the village from insurgent attacks while respecting local customs and political sensitivities. The exercise was designed to be nearly impossible, with competing factions within the village council, conflicting cultural requirements, and limited resources for implementing any security measures. Maya spent her first day in the village not talking about security at all. Instead, she listened to the council members discuss their concerns about drought, education for their children, and economic opportunities. She asked questions about village history, family relationships, and traditional methods for resolving disputes. By the second day, Maya had identified the underlying tensions that were preventing the council from reaching consensus on security issues. Some council members were worried that cooperating with American forces would make them targets for retaliation. Others were concerned that security measures would interfere with traditional farming and trading activities. Maya developed a security plan that addressed these concerns by incorporating traditional village defense methods with modern tactical techniques. Instead of establishing fixed checkpoints that would disrupt daily life, she proposed a system of rotating patrols led by village members who knew the local terrain and could identify strangers or unusual activity. The plan also included economic incentives for villagers who provided security information and guarantees that security measures would be implemented in ways that respected religious and cultural practices. Most importantly, Maya made sure that the village council retained control over day-to-day security decisions, with American forces serving in a supporting rather than a leading role. The exercise instructors later told Maya that her approach had been so effective that they were considering adopting elements of her plan for real-world operations. More importantly for Maya's career, her performance had caught the attention of observers from other special operations units who were always looking for talented soldiers to recruit. The final week of AWG selection was designed to evaluate candidates under maximum stress. Sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, and constant pressure were used to strip away candidates' ability to rely on rehearsed responses, revealing their true character and decision-making abilities. Maya entered the final week already exhausted from 3 weeks of intensive training. But she had learned from her father that exhaustion was often more mental than physical. She had developed techniques for managing stress and maintaining focus even when her body was demanding rest. The culminating exercise was a 72-hour scenario that combined all the skills that had been tested separately during the previous weeks. Candidates were inserted into a simulated combat environment where they had to navigate to multiple objectives, gather intelligence, coordinate with friendly forces, and complete mission-critical tasks while under constant harassment from opposing forces. Maya's team included 2 male candidates who had been among the strongest performers throughout the selection process. Both were experienced soldiers with multiple deployments, and both had initially been skeptical about working with a female teammate during such a demanding exercise. Their skepticism disappeared during the first night of the exercise. Maya's ability to navigate in complete darkness, combined with her talent for detecting opposing forces before they could spring ambushes, kept the team moving efficiently toward their objectives while other teams were bogged down in firefights or lost in the wilderness. More importantly, Maya's calm leadership under pressure helped hold the team together when exhaustion and stress began to take their toll. She rationed the team's limited supplies carefully, made tactical decisions quickly and confidently, and maintained morale by focusing on mission accomplishment rather than on the discomfort they were all experiencing. On the second day of the exercise, Maya's team was assigned an objective that required them to infiltrate a heavily defended compound and retrieve intelligence without being detected. The compound was guarded by instructors playing the role of enemy forces, and any team that was detected would automatically fail the exercise. Maya spent 4 hours conducting surveillance of the compound, noting guard positions, shift changes, and patrol patterns. She identified a vulnerable point in the perimeter where drainage from winter rains had washed out a section of fence, creating a gap that was hidden from the guard positions by a combination of natural terrain features and poor lighting. The infiltration took place during a shift change, when guard attention was focused on internal communications rather than perimeter security. Maya led her team through the gap, across the compound, and into the target building without triggering any of the detection systems or alerting any of the guards. Inside the building, Maya located the intelligence materials they had been assigned to retrieve, but she also noticed additional materials that hadn't been mentioned in their briefing. Maya made copies of everything, reasoning that real-world intelligence operations often uncovered unexpected information that could be crucial to mission success. The team exfiltrated as carefully as they had infiltrated, and Maya led them to a rally point 6 miles away where they could safely transmit the intelligence they had gathered. The entire operation had taken 11 hours, with most of that time spent in careful observation and planning rather than in hasty action. When the exercise concluded, Maya's team was the only one that had successfully completed all assigned objectives without being detected or sustaining any simulated casualties. More importantly, the additional intelligence that Maya had gathered during their infiltration turned out to be information that the instructors had planted specifically to test whether candidates would show initiative beyond the minimum requirements of their mission. The AWG selection course graduation ceremony was held on a Friday morning in March, with candidates' families and unit representatives in attendance. Of the 36 soldiers who had started the selection process, 14 had completed all requirements and earned assignment to the asymmetric warfare group. Maya was not only the first female soldier to complete AWG selection, she had finished first in her class overall. Her scores in navigation, marksmanship, tactical problem-solving, and leadership had been the highest recorded in the program's 7-year history. But Maya's graduation from AWG selection was just the beginning of her journey toward elite status. AWG assignment came with opportunities for advanced training that weren't available to conventional soldiers, and Maya intended to take advantage of every opportunity that would move her closer to her ultimate goal. 3 days after graduation, Maya received a call from Master Chief Rodriguez, the Navy SEAL who would later introduce her to the Special Operations community. Rodriguez had been observing AWG candidates for potential recruitment to joint training programs, and Maya's performance had impressed him enough that he wanted to meet with her in person. Maya arrived at Master Chief Rodriguez's office, expecting a standard recruiting conversation. Instead, she found herself in a room with representatives from 4 different special operations units, all of whom had been tracking her progress through AWG selection. Sergeant Chun, Rodriguez said, "We've been watching your career development, and we think you might be interested in some opportunities that aren't widely advertised. How do you feel about pushing yourself even further beyond conventional limits?" Maya had learned early in her military career that opportunities like this didn't come along often, and that hesitation was usually interpreted as lack of commitment. "Master Chief," she replied, "I've never been interested in conventional limits." Rodriguez smiled. "Good answer. How soon can you be ready for sniper school?" Maya's heart rate spiked, but she kept her voice steady. "How soon do you need me to be ready?" "Classes start in 6 weeks, Rodriguez said. "Fair warning, what we're offering isn't the standard Army sniper course. This is a joint program that combines the best elements of Army, Navy, and Marine Corps sniper training. The attrition rate is higher, the standards are tougher, and the expectations are beyond anything you've encountered so far." Maya had been preparing for this conversation, in one form or another, for her entire military career. "Master Chief, with respect, nothing I've encountered so far has been beyond my capabilities." Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the attitude we're looking for. Welcome to the next level, Sergeant Chun." The Joint Special Operations Sniper Course was held at a classified location in the mountains of Virginia, where winter temperatures dropped below freezing and summer humidity made every breath feel like drowning. The course was designed to push students beyond their physical and mental limits, creating snipers who could operate effectively in any environment, under any conditions, against any opponent. Maya arrived at the training facility on a Monday morning in April, carrying everything she owned in 2 duffel bags and a rifle case containing the custom .308 Winchester that had been her high school graduation gift from her father. She was one of 24 students in her class, and the only woman. Her classmates included Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Marine Force reconnaissance operators, and Air Force Special Operations personnel. Every student had already completed their service's basic sniper training and had demonstrated exceptional marksmanship and tactical skills in their respective units. The joint course was designed to take already elite snipers and transform them into something even more specialized. The first instructor Maya met was Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, a Marine sniper with 6 combat deployments and a reputation for being completely immune to sympathy or compromise. Torres had trained hundreds of snipers over his 15-year career, and he had never seen a student who couldn't be broken if sufficient pressure was applied in the right places. "Ladies and gentlemen," Torres announced to the assembled students, "welcome to the most demanding military training you will ever experience. Over the next 16 weeks, we're going to teach you to be invisible, patient, precise, and deadly. Some of you will not complete this course. Some of you will quit. Some of you will be dismissed for failure to meet standards. Those who graduate will join a very exclusive brotherhood." Torres paused and looked directly at Maya. "I should mention that in the 12 years we've been running this course, we have never graduated a female student. Not because we don't want to, but because the physical and mental demands have proven to be insurmountable obstacles. Sergeant Chun, I hope you prove me wrong, but I'm not optimistic." Maya met Torres's gaze without flinching. "Staff Sergeant Torres, I didn't come here to prove you wrong. I came here to become the best sniper in this course." Torres smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "We'll see about that, Sergeant." The first month of training focused on the fundamentals of precision shooting, but at a level far beyond what Maya had experienced even in AWG selection. Students were required to consistently hit targets the size of a playing card at ranges exceeding 800 meters, in conditions ranging from complete darkness to driving rain to crosswinds that would knock most people off balance. Maya's natural shooting ability gave her an initial advantage, but she quickly discovered that natural talent was just the entry fee for this level of training. Every student in the course could shoot exceptionally well, What separated the graduates from the failures was the ability to maintain that precision under stress, exhaustion, and psychological pressure. The instructors used every possible method to break students' concentration and composure. They would fire blank ammunition near students' ears while they were lining up shots, spray them with cold water during shooting exercises, and create artificial time pressures that force students to choose between speed and accuracy. Maya approached these challenges the same way she had approached every other obstacle in her military career, with methodical analysis and relentless practice. She studied the patterns of distraction and stress that the instructors used, developing mental techniques for maintaining focus regardless of external conditions. But the real test of Maya's abilities came during the course's signature exercise, the unknown distance shoot. Students were taken to a location they had never seen before and given 30 minutes to engage 10 targets at unknown ranges varying from 200 to 1,200 meters. They had to estimate distances using only their eyes and experience, calculate wind and elevation adjustments without the aid of computers or spotting scopes, and engage each target with a single shot. Maya's performance on the unknown distance shoot was the first time her instructors began to realize that they were dealing with someone truly exceptional. While other students were struggling to hit targets at 600 meters, Maya was consistently engaging targets at 1,000 meters and beyond with first-round hits. More importantly, Maya was completing the exercise faster than any student in the course's history while maintaining accuracy levels that her instructors had never seen before. She seemed to have an intuitive understanding of ballistics and environmental factors that allowed her to make complex calculations in seconds rather than minutes. Staff Sergeant Torres, who had been skeptical of Maya's abilities from the beginning, found himself watching her performance with growing amazement. After one particularly impressive demonstration where Maya hit 9 out of 10 targets at ranges exceeding 800 meters, Torres pulled Maya aside for a private conversation. "Chun," he said, "I've been training snipers for 15 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. Where did you learn to calculate range and wind effects so quickly?" Maya considered the question carefully. "Staff Sergeant, I grew up hunting in Montana, where the wind never stops blowing and the ranges are always long. My father taught me to read conditions instinctively rather than relying on formulas and equipment. He said that in combat, you might not have time for calculations." Torres nodded thoughtfully. "Your father was right, but what you're doing goes beyond just good training. You're making shots that should be mathematically impossible given the conditions and the equipment you're using." Maya wasn't sure how to respond to that observation. She had always been able to shoot better than the people around her, but she had never thought of her abilities as being beyond normal human capabilities. "I just focus on the target and trust my training, Staff Sergeant." Torres studied Maya's face for a moment, then made a decision that would change the trajectory of her entire career. "Chun, I'm going to recommend you for some additional training that isn't part of the standard curriculum. How do you feel about working with some specialized equipment?" This specialized equipment turned out to be prototype sniper systems that were being developed for use in extreme long-range engagements. Maya found herself training with rifles and ammunition that were classified at levels far above her current security clearance, under the supervision of instructors whose names she was told to forget immediately after meeting them. The new equipment was designed to engage targets at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters under adverse conditions. Previous testing had shown that even experienced snipers struggled to achieve consistent results with these systems, which required a level of precision and environmental awareness that pushed human capabilities to their absolute limits. Maya adapted to the new equipment as if she had been using it her entire life. Within a week, she was consistently hitting targets at 1,800 meters, ranges that most snipers would consider impossible for reliable engagement. Her accuracy was so consistent that the equipment manufacturers asked to study her shooting technique to improve their training protocols. But Maya's most impressive demonstration came during a nighttime exercise where she was tasked with engaging multiple targets using thermal imaging and night vision equipment. The targets were positioned at ranges from 400 to 1,600 meters, in terrain that provided minimal visual references for range estimation. Using equipment she had never seen before the day of the exercise, Maya engaged all 12 targets with 12 shots, completing the exercise in less than 20 minutes. The accuracy of her shooting was so precise that the instructors initially suspected equipment malfunction. Thermal imaging systems weren't supposed to be capable of supporting the kind of precision Maya had demonstrated. Post-exercise analysis confirmed that Maya had achieved something unprecedented in the history of modern sniper training. She had demonstrated the ability to engage targets at extreme ranges, under adverse conditions, with equipment she had minimal experience using, while maintaining accuracy standards that exceeded the theoretical capabilities of the systems she was employing. Word of Maya's performance reached the highest levels of the special operations community. Within days of her thermal shooting demonstration, Maya received a security clearance upgrade and an invitation to participate in training exercises with units whose existence was not publicly acknowledged. But first, she had to complete the Joint Sniper course. The final month of training focused on fieldcraft and operational deployment scenarios. Students were required to demonstrate their ability to infiltrate target areas undetected, establish concealed positions, conduct surveillance for extended periods, and engage designated targets while evading counter-sniper efforts. Maya's background in hunting and tracking gave her significant advantages in fieldcraft training. She could move through terrain without leaving detectable signs of her passage, establish shooting positions that were virtually invisible even to trained observers, and remain motionless for hours while maintaining constant awareness of her surroundings. During one exercise, Maya was tasked with infiltrating a simulated enemy compound and conducting surveillance for 72 hours while remaining undetected. The compound was guarded by instructors and advanced students from previous courses, all of whom were actively searching for signs of student infiltration. Maya established her observation position within 200 meters of the compound, concealed in a location that provided clear fields of view while offering natural camouflage and multiple escape routes. She remained in position for the entire 72-hour period, documenting guard routines, identifying key personnel, and reporting intelligence information through encrypted radio communications. When the exercise concluded, the instructor spent an additional 6 hours searching for Maya's position before finally asking her to reveal her location. Even when they knew approximately where she had been concealed, it took several minutes to actually locate the carefully camouflaged hide she had constructed. Maya's fieldcraft abilities impressed her instructors, but what made her truly exceptional was her integration of shooting skills, tactical awareness, and psychological resilience. She demonstrated the ability to maintain peak performance under conditions that degraded other students' capabilities, and she showed a level of situational awareness that allowed her to adapt to changing conditions faster than her instructors could create new challenges. The culminating exercise of the Joint Sniper course was a 5-day scenario that combined all the skills students had learned over the previous 4 months. Students were inserted into a large training area and tasked with multiple objectives that required long-range shooting, surveillance, infiltration, and extraction while evading hunter-killer teams that were actively pursuing them. Maya was assigned the most challenging set of objectives in the exercise, including several targets at ranges exceeding 1,200 meters and surveillance requirements that would keep her in hostile territory for the entire 5-day period. The instructors later admitted that they had designed her scenario to be nearly impossible, partly to test the limits of her abilities and partly to see how she would respond to inevitable failure. Maya approached the exercise with the same methodical planning that had characterized her entire time in the course. She studied the terrain carefully, identified multiple routes between her assigned objectives, and developed contingency plans for every phase of the operation. On the first day, Maya successfully engaged 3 long-range targets while remaining completely undetected by the hunter-killer teams. On the second day, she completed a surveillance mission that provided intelligence information beyond what had been requested in her assignment. On the third and fourth days, She continued to complete objectives while the instructors escalated the pressure by increasing the number of teams searching for her. By the fifth day, Maya had completed every assigned objective and was moving toward her designated extraction point when the instructors presented her with an unexpected challenge. A simulated friendly force had been captured by opposing forces, and Maya was given the opportunity to attempt a rescue that was not part of her original mission. Maya could have proceeded to her extraction point and graduated from the course with the highest scores in its history. Instead, she chose to attempt a rescue, even though failure would mean automatic disqualification from the program. The rescue required Maya to infiltrate a heavily defended position, neutralize multiple guards without raising an alarm, and extract the friendly force while evading pursuit across several miles of hostile terrain. It was the kind of mission that would normally be assigned to a full team of special operations personnel, not a single sniper. Maya spent 4 hours in reconnaissance, identifying guard positions, patrol patterns, and the location where the friendly force was being held. She waited until the early morning hours, when guard alertness was at its lowest point, before making her move. Using a combination of precision shooting and close-quarters combat techniques she had learned in previous training, Maya neutralized 6 guard without raising an alarm, freed the captive friendly force, and led him safely to the extraction point. The entire rescue operation took less than 3 hours and was executed with a level of precision that amazed the instructors who had designed it to be impossible. Maya graduated from the Joint Sniper course with the highest scores ever recorded, but more importantly, she had earned something that no amount of training could provide: the respect and recognition of the special operations community. Word of her abilities had spread throughout the elite units, and she was already being recruited for missions that would test her skills in real combat conditions. It was during the graduation ceremony that Maya first heard the nickname that would follow her for the rest of her career. Master Chief Rodriguez, who had been observing Maya's progress throughout the course, stood to address the graduating class. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rodriguez said, "it has been my privilege to watch some truly exceptional soldiers develop into even more exceptional snipers over the past 4 months. But I want to take a moment to recognize someone who has redefined what we thought was possible." Rodriguez looked directly at Maya. "Sergeant Chun, your instructors have spent considerable time trying to find an appropriate call sign for someone with your unique abilities. After much discussion, we've settled on a name that reflects not just your shooting skills, but your overall approach to warfare." Maya felt her pulse quicken. Call signs were serious business in the special operations community, and the fact that her instructors had chosen one for her rather than letting her select her own indicated a level of respect that was rarely accorded to new graduates. From this day forward, Rodriguez announced, "Sergeant First Class Maya Chun will be known as Apex. Because like the apex of a mountain, she represents the highest point that the rest of us can aspire to reach." The room erupted in applause from fellow students and instructors who had witnessed Maya's extraordinary performance over the previous 4 months. But Maya barely heard the applause. She was focused on the significance of what had just happened. She had achieved her goal of becoming an elite sniper, but more than that, she had earned recognition as something beyond elite. She had become Apex, and that name carried with it expectations and responsibilities that would shape every decision she made for the rest of her military career. As the graduation ceremony concluded and Maya prepared to leave for her new assignment, she reflected on how far she had traveled from that ranch in Montana where her father had first taught her to shoot. But she also knew that her journey was just beginning. Being named Apex was an honor, but it was also a challenge to continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Maya Chun had become Apex, and now the world would see what that truly meant. Maya's first combat deployment came 3 months after graduating from sniper school, when she was assigned to a joint task force operating in Afghanistan's Kunar province. The mission was classified as direct action against high-value targets, but the reality was more complex than any training scenario had prepared her for. Kunar province was known among military personnel as one of the most dangerous areas of operation in Afghanistan. The mountainous terrain provided countless hiding places for insurgent forces. The local population was deeply suspicious of foreign military presence, and the political situation changed daily as different tribal groups shifted their allegiances. Maya arrived at Forward Operating Base Chapman on a dusty Thursday morning in August, carrying her custom rifle and enough personal gear to sustain operations for 6 months. She was assigned to Task Force Dagger, a joint special operations unit that included Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, and Air Force Special Operations personnel. The task force commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Mitchell, was a career special operations officer with 4 combat deployments and a reputation for demanding perfection from his personnel. Mitchell had requested Maya specifically based on reports of her performance in training, but he had never worked with a female sniper in combat conditions. Apex, Mitchell said during Maya's initial briefing, using her call sign with a casual familiarity that indicated her reputation had preceded her. I'm going to be direct with you. I requested you for this deployment because but I've never had a female operator in my task force, and some of my team leaders have concerns about unit cohesion and mission effectiveness. Maya had anticipated this conversation and had prepared her response carefully. Sir, I understand the concerns, and I respect the fact that unit cohesion is essential for mission success. I'm not here to prove that women can do this job. I'm here to do this job better than anyone expects. Mitchell studied Maya's face for a moment, then nodded approvingly. Good answer. Your first mission briefing is at 1,400 hours. Staff Sergeant Williams will show you to your quarters and get you oriented with our operational procedures. Maya's quarters were a plywood box barely large enough for a cot and a footlocker, but after 4 months of field training exercises, any indoor space felt luxurious. She used her first afternoon at the FOB to study intelligence reports about recent enemy activity in the area, familiarize herself with the terrain features visible from the base, and zero her rifle on the range that had been constructed behind the motor pool. That evening, Maya attended her first operational briefing with the 12 other members of Task Force Dagger. The mission was straightforward in concept, but complex in execution. Intelligence sources had identified a compound where a high-value target was meeting with local tribal leaders to coordinate attacks against coalition forces. The target had to be eliminated without harming the tribal leaders, who were potential allies in the larger counterinsurgency effort. The compound was located in a valley surrounded by ridgelines that provided excellent observation positions, but limited approaches for ground forces. Previous attempts to capture or kill the target had failed, because he was protected by a sophisticated early warning network that allowed him to escape whenever coalition forces moved into the area. Captain Sarah Davis, the intelligence officer who briefed the mission, explained that the target would be meeting with tribal leaders for approximately 4 hours on the following Tuesday evening. The meeting location was known, but the target's exact position within the compound would not be predictable. Additionally, several innocent civilians would be present, making precision essential. The shot will need to be made at a range of approximately 1,400 meters, Davis explained, in variable wind conditions, during limited visibility hours, with multiple potential targets in the engagement area. Mission success requires positive target identification and a single shot that eliminates the target without endangering any other personnel. Maya listened to the briefing without comment, but she was already analyzing the tactical challenges the mission presented. A 1,400-meter shot in mountain terrain would require precise environmental calculations and perfect execution. The presence of innocent civilians meant there would be no opportunity for follow-up shots if the first round missed or failed to achieve the desired effect. After the formal briefing concluded, Captain Rodriguez, the team leader who would be responsible for establishing the sniper position, asked to speak with Maya privately. Rodriguez was a 10-year veteran with multiple combat deployments, and he had worked with some of the most skilled snipers in the military. Apex, Rodriguez said, I've read your training records, and they're impressive as hell. But training and combat are different animals. In training, if you miss, you get to try again. In combat, if you miss, people die. Are you ready for that level of responsibility? Maya met Rodriguez's gaze directly. "Captain, I've been preparing for this responsibility my entire life. I won't miss." Rodriguez nodded, but Maya could see the concern in his eyes. "I hope you're right. But just so you know, this mission is being watched at very high levels. Success will probably accelerate your career significantly. Failure will probably end it." Maya spent the next 3 days in intensive preparation for the mission. She studied satellite imagery of the target area, analyzed weather patterns and wind data from previous days, and practiced shooting at similar ranges under various conditions. She also worked with the intelligence team to develop multiple target identification scenarios, ensuring that she would be able to distinguish the high-value target from other personnel in the compound. The most challenging aspect of the mission was the approach to the sniper position. Maya would need to infiltrate through several miles of hostile territory, establish a concealed position within 1,400 meters of the target compound, and remain undetected for up to 12 hours while waiting for the target to appear. Captain Rodriguez would accompany Maya as her spotter and security element, but the small team size meant they would be completely on their own if they encountered enemy forces during infiltration or exfiltration. Maya had worked with spotters during training, but never in combat conditions where mistakes could be fatal. On Monday evening, Maya and Rodriguez began their infiltration, moving through darkness toward the ridgeline that would provide the optimal shooting position. The route took them through terrain that was known to be patrolled by enemy forces, requiring them to move slowly and carefully to avoid detection. Maya's fieldcraft training proved invaluable during the approach. She was able to detect signs of recent enemy activity that Rodriguez missed, allowing them to avoid areas where they might encounter hostile patrols. Her ability to move silently through difficult terrain allowed them to maintain better speed than their original timeline had anticipated. They reached their designated sniper position at 0300 hours, giving them several hours to establish concealment and prepare for the engagement before dawn. Maya spent the dark hours before sunrise constructing a shooting position that was virtually invisible from any angle while providing clear fields of fire toward the target compound. As the sun rose, Maya began her detailed study of the target area. Using her spotting scope, she identified every building in the compound, noted the locations of guards and security measures, and began tracking the patterns of human activity that would help her predict where the target meeting would take place. The intelligence estimate had been accurate. At approximately 1800 hours, vehicles began arriving at the compound, carrying what appeared to be tribal leaders and their security personnel. Maya watched through her scope as men in traditional Afghan dress entered the main building, followed by guards who established security positions around the compound perimeter. At 1847 hours, a new vehicle arrived carrying 3 men who matched the description of the high-value target and his bodyguards. Maya confirmed target identification through careful observation of physical characteristics and behavioral patterns that had been described in the intelligence briefing. The target entered the main building at 1851 hours, beginning what intelligence estimated would be a 4-hour meeting. Maya settled into position to wait, controlling her breathing and maintaining perfect stillness while keeping constant observation on the building where the meeting was taking place. The psychological pressure of waiting for the shot was more intense than anything Maya had experienced in training. She knew that military and intelligence personnel at multiple command levels were monitoring this mission, that her performance would be evaluated by people who would shape her future career, and that failure would reflect not just on her abilities but on the capabilities of all female soldiers. At 2,223 hours, after more than 3 hours of waiting, the target emerged from the building and walked toward his vehicle. Maya had approximately 90 seconds before he would be inside the vehicle and protected by armor and concealment. Maya confirmed her range estimation, made final adjustments for wind and atmospheric conditions, and settled into her shooting position. Through her scope, she could see the target clearly, but she could also see the tribal leaders and their bodyguards who were standing nearby. The shot would have to be precisely placed to eliminate the target without endangering any other personnel. Maya controlled her breathing, aligned her crosshairs, and applied steady pressure to the trigger. The shot broke cleanly, and Maya immediately followed the flight of her bullet through the scope, watching as it struck the target's center mass at a range of 1,387 meters. The target dropped instantly, killed by a single shot that had traveled nearly 9/10 of a mile to find its mark. The precision of the shot was so exact that the target's bodyguards initially did not realize he had been shot, allowing Maya and Rodriguez to begin their exfiltration before enemy forces could organize a response. The mission was a complete success, achieving its primary objective while avoiding any collateral damage or compromise of friendly forces. Maya had demonstrated that her training capabilities translated directly to combat effectiveness, and she had done so under conditions that would have challenged the most experienced snipers. But Maya's first combat success was just the beginning of a deployment that would establish a reputation throughout the special operations community. Over the following months, she would participate in dozens of missions that would test every aspect of her training and push her abilities to limits she had never imagined. 3 weeks after her first successful engagement, Maya was assigned to support a hostage rescue operation that required precision shooting in an urban environment. The mission involved American civilians who had been captured by insurgent forces and were being held in a building in downtown Jalalabad. The rescue operation was complicated by the fact that the hostages were being held in a building surrounded by civilian residences, and intelligence indicated that the hostage-takers had rigged explosives that could be detonated if they felt threatened by approaching coalition forces. Maya's role in the mission was to eliminate specific guards at precise moments to create opportunities for the rescue team to advance without triggering the explosive devices. The shots would be made at ranges varying from 200 to 600 meters, in an urban environment with limited concealment and significant risk of civilian casualties if anything went wrong. Maya established her shooting position on the roof of a building that provided clear lines of sight to the hostage location, while offering concealment from enemy observation. The position required her to make shots at multiple angles and ranges in rapid succession, with no margin for error. The rescue operation began at 0430 hours, with Maya engaging the first target as the rescue team began their approach. Her shot eliminated a guard who was positioned to observe the main approach route, allowing the rescue team to advance without being detected. Over the next 20 minutes, Maya eliminated 4 additional guards with single shots, each at a different range and angle, creating a corridor of safety that allowed the rescue team to reach the building where the hostages were being held. Her shooting was so precise that none of the remaining guards realized they were under sniper fire until the rescue team was already in position to assault the building. The hostage rescue was successful, with all American civilians recovered safely and without civilian casualties. Maya's precision shooting had been instrumental in the mission's success, and her performance under urban combat conditions demonstrated versatility that impressed commanders who had worked with snipers throughout their careers. Word of Maya's combat performance spread rapidly through the special operations community. By the end of her first month in Afghanistan, she was being requested specifically for missions that required extreme precision under challenging conditions. Her call sign Apex was becoming known not just within Task Force Dagger, but throughout the Joint Special Operations Command structure. Maya's most significant mission of her first deployment came in October, when intelligence sources identified a meeting of high-level insurgent commanders who were planning coordinated attacks against coalition forces throughout eastern Afghanistan. The meeting was to take place in a remote mountain location that was virtually inaccessible to ground forces, but provided clear fields of fire for a skilled sniper. The mission required Maya to infiltrate alone through more than 15 miles of hostile territory, establish a concealed position at an altitude exceeding 9,000 feet, and remain in position for up to 5 days while waiting for the target meeting to take place. It was the kind of mission that was normally assigned to entire special operations teams, but Maya's unique combination of skills made her the only operator capable of completing it successfully. Maya began her infiltration on a Tuesday evening, moving through terrain that was so difficult that it had never been successfully penetrated by coalition forces. She carried enough food and water for 7 days, along with her rifle and the specialized equipment needed for high-altitude operations. The approach took Maya through territory controlled by insurgent forces who maintained constant patrols and had established observation posts on key terrain features. Maya's ability to move undetected through hostile territory was tested more severely than it had ever been in training, requiring her to avoid detection by enemies who knew the terrain intimately and were actively searching for signs of coalition presence. Maya reached her designated sniper position on Thursday morning, after more than 36 hours of continuous movement through some of the most difficult terrain in Afghanistan. The position she had selected provided clear observation of the valley where the insurgent meeting was scheduled to take place, while offering concealment and multiple escape routes if her position was compromised. Maya remained in position for 4 days, maintaining constant surveillance of the target area, while surviving on minimal food and water in temperatures that dropped below freezing every night. Her fieldcraft skills were tested to their absolute limits, as she remained completely motionless for hours at a time, while enemy patrols passed within meters of her concealed position. On Saturday afternoon, vehicles began arriving in the valley below Maya's position, carrying men who matched the descriptions of the high-value targets she had been assigned to eliminate. Maya confirmed target identification through careful observation, then waited for the optimal moment to engage. The engagement took place at a range of 1,847 meters, the longest successful sniper shot of Maya's career to that point. The target was eliminated with a single shot that demonstrated precision capabilities that amazed even the intelligence analysts who reviewed the mission footage. Maya's successful infiltration, target elimination, and exfiltration from the remote mountain location established her reputation as the most capable sniper in theater. Her performance on the mission earned her a Bronze Star Medal and recognition as the most effective special operations asset deployed in eastern Afghanistan. But more importantly for Maya's career development, her combat performance had caught the attention of senior special operations commanders who were responsible for identifying and developing the next generation of elite warriors. Maya was about to receive opportunities that would test her abilities against the world's most dangerous opponents. Maya's second deployment took her to Syria, where she was assigned to a classified task force hunting high-value targets associated with international terrorism networks. The operational environment was even more challenging than Afghanistan, with multiple hostile factions, limited intelligence, and political constraints that made every mission a delicate balance between military effectiveness and diplomatic considerations. The task force operated from a forward staging area that officially did not exist, conducting missions that would never be publicly acknowledged. Maya was one of only 8 operators assigned to the unit, each selected for unique capabilities that made them effective against targets that conventional forces could not engage successfully. Maya's reputation had preceded her to Syria, and she found herself working with operators who had specifically requested assignment to her task force because they wanted to work with a sniper known as Apex. For the first time in her career, Maya was recognized not as a promising soldier or a capable female operator, but as an elite warrior whose gender was irrelevant to her battlefield effectiveness. The task force commander, Colonel Marcus Webb, was a 25-year special operations veteran who had worked with the most elite soldiers in the American military. Webb had requested Maya based on her Afghanistan performance, but even he was unprepared for what she would accomplish during her Syria deployment. Maya's first mission in Syria required her to eliminate a target who had been evading coalition forces for more than 2 years. The target was a bomb maker whose devices had killed dozens of coalition personnel and hundreds of civilians. Intelligence indicated that he was meeting with financial supporters in a location that could only be engaged from extreme range under nearly impossible conditions. The shot would have to be made at night, at a range exceeding 2,000 meters, through a gap in urban buildings that provided less than 3 feet of clearance, with the target visible for no more than 15 seconds as he moved between vehicles. It was the kind of shot that most snipers would consider impossible, but Maya approached it as simply another technical problem that required careful analysis and precise execution. Maya spent a week studying the target location, timing the target's movement patterns, and calculating the environmental factors that would affect a shot at such extreme range. She worked with the task force intelligence team to develop multiple contingency plans, ensuring that she would be prepared for any variation in target behavior or environmental conditions. The shot was scheduled for a Tuesday night when weather conditions and target movement patterns aligned to create the brief window of opportunity that Maya would need. Maya established her shooting position in a building more than 2 kilometers from the target location, using specialized equipment that pushed the boundaries of current sniper technology. At 2,347 hours, the target emerged from a building and began walking toward his vehicle, following the pattern that Maya had observed for the previous week. Maya had approximately 12 seconds to acquire the target, confirm identification, and engage before he reached the protection of his armored vehicle. Maya's shot was fired at a range of 2,034 meters, traveling through a gap between buildings that provided less than 18 inches of clearance on either side. The bullet struck the target's center mass, eliminating him instantly with what was confirmed as the longest successful sniper engagement in the history of modern warfare. The precision of Maya's shot amazed even the intelligence analysts who had planned the mission. Post-mission analysis confirmed that Maya had achieved something that was theoretically impossible given the environmental conditions, equipment limitations, and target movement patterns. Her shot had redefined the understanding of what was possible in long-range precision engagement. Word of Maya's record-breaking shot spread throughout the international special operations community within days. Military personnel from allied nations began requesting briefings about her techniques and equipment, and defense contractors wanted to study her methods to improve their sniper systems. But Maya's most significant achievement in Syria came during a mission that tested not just her shooting abilities, but her tactical judgment and leadership under the most extreme pressure imaginable. Intelligence sources had identified a meeting of terrorist leaders who were planning a coordinated attack against civilian targets in multiple countries. The meeting was taking place in a compound that was heavily defended and surrounded by civilian populations. The mission required Maya to lead a 4-person team in a direct action raid that combined precision shooting, close-quarters combat, and explosive breaching techniques. It was Maya's first opportunity to demonstrate leadership in combat, and the success or failure of the mission would determine whether she would be considered for the most elite assignments available to special operations personnel. Maya's team included 3 of the most experienced operators in the task force, all of whom had initially been skeptical about taking orders from someone who had been in special operations for less than 2 years. But Maya's combat record and her performance in training exercises had earned their respect, and they were willing to follow her lead in a mission that would test all of their abilities. The compound where the terrorist meeting was taking place was defended by more than 20 guards armed with automatic weapons, rocket-propelled grenades, and improvised explosive devices. Intelligence indicated that the building was booby-trapped and that the terrorists were prepared to fight to the death rather than surrender. Maya developed a plan that combined stealth infiltration, precision shooting, and coordinated assault techniques to neutralize the compound's defenses while minimizing the risk to civilian populations in the surrounding area. The plan required split-second timing and perfect execution, with no margin for error or hesitation. The mission began at 0200 hours, with Maya and her team infiltrating through a section of the city that was controlled by hostile forces. Maya's ability to move undetected through urban terrain allowed the team to reach their assault positions without being discovered by enemy patrols or civilian informants. Maya initiated the assault by eliminating 4 guards who were positioned to provide early warning of approaching coalition forces. Her shots were made at ranges varying from 150 to 400 meters in darkness, with the precision necessary to neutralize threats without alerting other defenders. With the outer perimeter secured, Maya led her team in a coordinated assault on the main building where the terrorist meeting was taking place. The assault required Maya to demonstrate proficiency with close-quarters combat techniques while coordinating the actions of her team members and adapting to rapidly changing tactical situations. Maya's team successfully penetrated the building and eliminated all hostile forces while capturing intelligence materials that provided crucial information about planned terrorist attacks. The mission was completed in less than 30 minutes, with no friendly casualties and minimal damage to surrounding civilian infrastructure. The success of Maya's mission prevented terrorist attacks that could have killed hundreds of innocent civilians, and the intelligence materials captured during the raid led to the disruption of terrorist networks throughout the region. Maya's leadership and tactical expertise had been instrumental in achieving mission success under conditions that would have challenged the most experienced special operations commanders. Colonel Webb's after-action report stated that Maya's performance during the Syria mission represented the highest level of tactical excellence and leadership that I have observed in 25 years of special operations. Webb recommended Maya for immediate promotion and assignment to the most classified programs available to special operations personnel. Maya's Syria deployment concluded with her being awarded the Silver Star Medal for her actions during the compound assault, making her one of the youngest soldiers ever to receive the award for direct combat action. More significantly, her performance had earned her recognition as one of the most capable operators in the entire special operations community. When Maya returned from Syria, she found that her reputation had grown beyond the military community. Intelligence agencies from allied nations were requesting her assistance with their most challenging missions, and defense contractors were offering consulting contracts that would have made her financially independent. But Maya's focus remained on continuing to push the boundaries of what was possible in military operations. She was offered assignment to programs that were so classified that acknowledging their existence would require security clearances that most generals didn't possess. Maya's next assignment was to the Joint Special Operations Command's most elite unit, where she would work with operators who represented the absolute pinnacle of military capability. Her new commanding officer was General Patricia Morrison, a pioneering female officer who had broken gender barriers throughout her career and was considered one of the most effective special operations leaders of her generation. Apex, General Morrison said during Maya's initial briefing, "You've accomplished more in 3 years of special operations than most operators achieve in entire careers. But I want to offer you opportunities that will test capabilities you didn't know you had." Maya listened as General Morrison described missions that were conducted in environments where American military personnel officially did not operate, against opponents who represented the most dangerous threats to global security. The missions required operators who could function independently for extended periods, make life and death decisions with minimal guidance, and achieve objectives that were critical to national security. "The question," General Morrison continued, "is whether you're ready to operate at a level where failure isn't just mission failure, but potential catastrophe for millions of innocent people." Maya had spent her entire career preparing for this conversation, working toward the moment when she would be offered the opportunity to operate at the highest levels of military capability. "General Morrison," she replied, "I've never been interested in anything less than the most challenging assignments available." General Morrison smiled approvingly. "Good answer. Your first mission briefing is tomorrow morning at 0600 hours. Fair warning, what we're about to ask you to do will test every skill you've developed and some that you haven't discovered yet." As Maya left General Morrison's office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a ranch in Montana to the most classified levels of American military operations. She had proven that excellence was not limited by gender, background, or conventional expectations, and she had earned recognition as one of the most capable warriors of her generation. But Maya knew that her greatest challenges were still ahead. She was about to begin operating in environments where the stakes were higher than anything she had previously experienced, against opponents who were as skilled and determined as she was. It would be the ultimate test of whether her reputation as Apex was based on exceptional performance or merely superior training and equipment. Over the following months, Maya would participate in missions that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible in special operations. She would work with international partners on operations that required diplomatic sensitivity as well as tactical excellence. She would develop new techniques and procedures that would become standard training for future generations of elite operators. Most importantly, Maya would continue to prove that the most dangerous opponents were often the ones who were underestimated by their enemies. The young woman who had been dismissed as just another diversity hire had become the standard by which all other operators measured their own capabilities. Maya's career was far from over, but her legacy was already established. She had proven that determination, skill, and intelligent preparation could overcome any obstacle, and she had inspired a new generation of soldiers to pursue excellence regardless of the barriers they might face. The nickname Apex had originally been chosen to reflect Maya's position at the peak of sniper capability, but it had evolved to represent something more significant. Maya had become the apex of what was possible in modern warfare, the standard toward which all other warriors aspired, and the proof that human potential was limited only by the courage to pursue perfection. In military circles around the world, when soldiers talked about the most legendary snipers in history, they mentioned names like Carlos Hathcock, Chris Kyle, and Craig Harrison. But when they talked about the most complete warrior of the modern era, there was only one name that mattered: Apex. Maya Chun had achieved something that went beyond military success or professional recognition. She had become a legend, and legends never truly die. They inspire future generations to reach for heights that seem impossible, to push beyond conventional limitations, and to prove that excellence is always possible for those who are willing to pay the price required to achieve it. The woman who had grown up shooting targets in the mountains of Montana had become the most feared and respected warrior on the planet. And this was only the beginning of what she would accomplish.